Hello, and welcome to Virtual Birding. We're starting out inside the car this week, the reason for which will be apparent in a bit, but first we'll start with the target bird. And for this week we're looking for Dovekie, which is a little football-shaped bird, white below, dark above, very, very tiny, about the size of a robin. And as we get out of the car here, you'll see it is quite windy today, so that should make things a little bit interesting. But that should be alright because we're not really trying to hear a lot of birds today. Mostly we're going to be looking for birds through our spotting scope from the end of this fishing pier. We're about half an hour south of Virginia Beach, Virginia, at a place called Little Island Park. And we're going to go out to the end of this pier, and today we're going to be sea watching, which is a relatively difficult kind of birding where you're looking at things very far away and kind of judging by shapes and sizes, but we'll see what we can do. Our target bird for this week, Dovekie, is probably pretty ambitious. It is a bird I've seen from this location before, but it is quite rare here, and oftentimes when you see them relatively far out. It's a bird that's much easier to get by boat than on land, but we'll try. Sometimes you gotta swing big and hopefully you'll get lucky. But even if we don't see Dovekie today out here in the wind and waves, we should be able to get at least quite a few other birds that we haven't seen here on Virtual Birding before. We'll get our scope set up here and we'll see what we can find. And right away there's a bird here close, and it looks like a common loon. I think most people think of the summer plumage when they see this bird, but this is what they look like in the winter. But we can tell it's a common loon because it's got that big, heavy, dagger-like bill that points out relatively straight off the head, and it's got very sort of thick proportions that a red-throated loon wouldn't have. And here we have something in the air. It looks like a northern gannet. That's a very cool bird, very cool seabird, related to the boobies. Pretty easy to identify with those long, thin wings. And it looks like there was a second one there that it just passed. Very neat bird. Definitely a classic seabird. So we've got a good start here already. Let's get our scope a little bit more set up and start looking out a little bit further, scanning around, seeing if we can see a Dovekie out on the horizon. And here goes a flock of birds past here now, and it looks like red-breasted mergansers. They're going to be one of the most common species we see out here flying by. In the winter they gather in pretty big numbers off the coast, out in the saltwater. I expect we'll see quite a few more of them. But there's probably some other ducks around, some other more classic sea ducks. So we'll keep scanning. There goes another flock there. And this also looks like red-breasted mergansers for the most part, but it looks like the first bird and the last four at the end of the tail are all black scoters. They're completely dark and they have relatively small bills, which you wouldn't expect on a surf scoter. Here we have a few more ducks out far, and yeah, more red-breasted mergansers. As I said, this is going to be the most common species of duck that we see out here, so it's not really a surprise. Hopefully we'll pick up a few other things. Now these red-breasted mergansers are quite a bit bigger than a Dovekie would be, so as you can imagine, if it's out pretty far, a Dovekie is going to be basically impossible to spot. And really, if it's sitting on the water with the waves the way they are, it's also going to be pretty difficult to see it. So our best bet is for one to fly by relatively close to shore, which, although there are quite a few Dovekies probably out in the ocean, off from this spot, getting one close enough to shore to see is pretty difficult, as these birds really are true seabirds in the winter and stay pretty far offshore. So we'll have to get a bit lucky, but for now, let's just focus on keeping scanning around, see if we can find as much as we can, and hope to get lucky and get a Dovekie going by. Here looks like more black scoters. Again, all dark, relatively small bills. behind us there's a bird in the water. Not a classic sea duck, but one that does enjoy being on the ocean. It's a female bufflehead. The male would have a lot more white, and the white on the head would extend sort of all the way across the nape, but that one's a little female. Very neat little small duck, and we'll keep scanning with our binoculars. And there's our common loon. Keep scanning along. I feel like I just saw a fin come up over those waves. I don't want to get too excited, but it could be something pretty interesting. And yeah, it is. It's Tamanins bottlenose dolphin, which formerly was Atlantic bottlenose dolphin. These would be the more inshore dolphins that were recently split from the offshore ones. And that's very cool, going along the waves. Yeah, definitely a neat mammal to add to the life lists, and very neat to see. Keep scanning. Oh, there's our loon again. It looks like he caught a fish. And he dove before eating it. Guess he intends to eat it underwater, as I imagine it'll be hard to catch a second one with that one still in his bill. And there's that first loon again out front, still bobbing around in the waves. Alright, let's get back into the scope, see if we can't find anything out at a distance. And keeping true to form, we've got more red-breasted mergansers. These ones are harder to see, but you can see that really long, skinny neck that something like a scoter or some of the other sea ducks wouldn't have. And they're not that football shape of like the alcids, so it's not something like a razorbill or a dovekie. Keep looking around here with our binoculars, and there goes another gannet flying away. You can see that one a little bit better as we're not looking into the sun. See that little bit of yellow on the head. Very cool bird. And you can see how it goes right over the surface of the water, and it'll ride right along the edge of the wave, using the wind blowing off the wave to give it some lift so it has to do less effort as it flies. And now it's going to lift off that air and get higher in the sky. Very cool. Definitely a lot going on for a windy day. And here we have a little horned grebe. Definitely prettier in the spring and the summer, but this is what they look like in the winter. And there he dives down. Didn't get the best look out of him since he was just swimming away, but maybe he'll pop back up. Oh, yep, and there he is. It's back up again, but still staying facing straight away from us. We'll see if he turns. And nope. Gonna dive right back down. I got a little excited when I first saw that because that's about the right size for a dovekie. It's probably a little bit bigger, but there's looks like a second female bufflehead has joined our first one. Very cute little ducks. Always enjoy seeing them. All right, back to the scope. Get out to see the horizon again. And there's a red-throated loon, so that one's a little different. You can see it's a lot skinnier than the common loons were, and if you pay attention, the head sort of droops as it flies. If you could see it a little bit better, you'd see a lot more white in the face, and you'd see the bill is really thin and upturned, which is very different than the common loon, but that droopy head is a pretty good indicator for a red-throated loon as it flies, and it does look a lot more slender than those big, bulky common loons. Very cool. 2 loon day. Don't get that all the time. Alright, we'll keep scanning out on the horizon. And there we got a flock of scoters. I'd guess these are surf scoters, but it's kind of hard to tell. But there you can see one with a little bit of white peeking out. The only scoter with white in the wing is white-winged scoter, so we'll add that to the list. Hopefully we'll get a better look at maybe some surf scoters. And very distant there, we've got another flock of red-breasted mergansers. Looks like scoters crossed them, but I didn't get a good look at that. Let's go back and look at those scoters again, see if we can't pick out any surf scoters. That's the only one we're missing, and they should be around. There's a bird out on its own a little closer. Yep, and there we go. All 3 scoters. That's a nice surf scoter. Nice male. You can see that really heavy bill that those black scoters didn't have, and the little bit of white on the forehead and on the back of the nape. Pretty easy identification, a little bit closer is definitely what I like to see. Got more birds flying on the horizon, take a scan. And these seem to be surf scoters too. At least I'm pretty sure. They definitely have bulkier looking heads, although flying away like that, it's a little trickier. But I believe those were surf scoters. Go take a peek over here. And there's a gull flying over there. And got a nice lesser blackback gull. It's got a lot thinner bill than a great blackback would have, and it's not quite as dark on the back. It's a little more slaty gray. There's a few ringbill gulls flying over there as well, but the lesser blackback is definitely the most interesting of the gulls that are there. Keep looking over here, see if there's anything else. Looks like something there on the water, and it's another common loon. Guess there's one over here too. This one's really nice and close, which is kind of nice. And looking back, there's a bird on the railing way back there. And nice, a boat-tailed grackle. It's definitely a lot greener than a common grackle would be, even though its tail isn't the longest. And it's calling, but in the wind you can't hear it at all, which is sort of crazy. But yeah, that bird didn't have the longest tail, but definitely a boat-tailed grackle. And looks like we've got some shorebirds on the beach, and they look really pale, and the number of shorebirds that you can see here in the winter is pretty low, so we can tell based on that really light color that those are sanderlings. Alright, a couple birds flying past up in the sky, and got some double-crested cormorants. Nice pickup. And we'll head back over to the scope. Keep scanning around, seeing if we can't find anything else, maybe a Dovekie. But this isn't a Dovekie, but it's another gull. That's pretty nice, Bonaparte's gull. You can see those really white triangles in the wings. That's a pretty good indicator. It's also quite small. In the summer they'd have a black head, but this time of year they don't have that, so you can't use that as an indicator. And here we have what looks like another black scoter. You can see, as opposed to those surf scoters earlier, that one you don't really notice the bill at all because it's quite small on that bird. And here's our common loon again in the surf. Ah, and look, you can see it put its head underwater. Loons will actually look underwater for fish before they dive. So when you see them put their head down like that, they're actually looking for prey. So pretty neat to see. Looking around, see if they can find anything. I got a nice look at its foot. You can see how far back on its body the foot is. Loons can't really stand up on land because their feet are so far back. Makes them really great swimmers, but not so good at walking. But very cool to see how far back it is, and there he goes. Alright, I won't lie to you. It is absolutely freezing out here. It's a pretty cold day, and this wind coming off the water makes it way, way colder. As much as I would love to see Dovekie, I don't think I can stand being out here any longer, so I think we're going to head back to the car. All in all, though, I would still say this is a success, as we saw a lot of very cool birds out here, and a lot of neat seabirds. Including this double-crested cormorant that's whipping through here. Not necessarily the best bird in the world, but definitely new for virtual birding, so that was a lot of fun. But seeing those loons so close was very neat, and having gannets going by, I think I'd say today was a success, even if we missed our target bird. Alright, made it behind the dune, so the wind cuts down a little bit. Feels good to be out of that wind. It is pretty exhausting being out in that really cold wind, scanning around, but definitely a lot of fun and definitely worth it. Alright, we had 15 species of birds today and 1 species of mammal, which was a dolphin. Very cool. We didn't walk very far at all, and we spent about an hour and 10 minutes out there in the freezing cold and missed our target bird of Dovekie. Here's our species list. Anything with an N after it indicates that it is a new bird for our virtual birding life list. Not too many species this time, but almost everything was new, so that is definitely something. And bottom is dolphin, very fun. So for our virtual birding life list, we now are up to 70 species with the 14 new ones for today, and we had 1 species of mammal with our dolphin, which was also new. Thank you for joining me out here in the icy wind. I hope you had as much fun as I did, and happy birding.